In this video, we're going to be looking at a cell and what is a cell in terms of the definition. This here is known as the microscopic unit that makes up all living things or organisms that you can think of, either from the little small bacteria you can think of to massive organisms like human beings and plants. Now, when we look at categories of cells, we can categorize them based on how many they are when it comes to how they can exist. First is for unicellular organisms. These here are known to be one cell that can exist alone. We have examples like bacteria, we have protists, we have prokaryotes. However, for multicellular organisms, we think of anything that has to do with eukaryotic animals, that are animals or plants that are dependent heavily on many cells that are interacting together. And this particular question comes to mind: how many cells can you get to in order for we to get to a functioning organism? That number is going to be based on what humans is known for. For example, the human body will have around 60 trillion cells. That is a lot of number to play around with, and this number are some of them dying and being replaced, death due to aging of the cell or massive damage due to injuries, and this here is replaced by cell division, which is a known process that we're going to look at in future videos. Now, when you talk about the most popular cells in the human body, the blood cell has the majority of number you can think of when it comes to the percent value. Now, the next thing we're going to look at is different categories of plant and animal cell. This on the left side is known as an animal cell based on the physiology, or in this case anatomy, and for the other one is known as a plant cell. And you might be asking yourself, why do we come up with this conclusion? This here is going to be based on how we label what they have in common. Like, for example, this A part of this cell is known as the mitochondria, and what is this capable of? This here is like a rod-like or rod-looking shape that is known to be the powerhouse of the cell. Why is it the powerhouse of the cell? The reason why is because it uses sugar and oxygen to generate energy. In this case, we know it to be adenosine triphosphate, ATP, continuously, and this continuous production of energy is what makes mitochondria truly special. Now, the next one here is known as the outer layer of the animal cell and also present in plant cell, known as the cell membrane. And what is this all about? The cell membrane is known to be like a layer of oil that kind of stops water loss in a particular plant or animal cell. This here also has protein channels that are integrated like a form of a gate that allows things specifically to go through. Let's say, for example, ions like potassium, or we have sodium, or we have calcium, or we can go in terms of different food materials that are going through the membrane in and out of the cell. Now, the next one here is known as the nucleus, and the nucleus is truly fascinating because it instructs how the cell should behave, should function in terms of not only the activity but also growth and development, and also you can think of reproduction wise. And so we have this particular molecule to thank, which is the genetic material that is found in this particular cell that doesn't come out of the nucleus, which is known as the deoxyribose nucleic acid, DNA. And We have other things that we can talk about in terms of the nucleus, but for this is just the basic understanding of it. The next one is D, which represents what the cytoplasm, and the cytoplasm is pretty much the surroundings of the entire cell, and the surroundings is pretty much mostly water, and also in terms of the texture it feels more like a jelly like feeling in here. Next here is closer to the nucleus, which is known as the endoplasmic reticulum. Now, there are other types of endoplasmic reticulum, like the rough and the smooth endoplasmic reticulum. And what does this endoplasmic reticulum do? This here is known to be, in terms of the visual, a network or interconnected tubes and sacs that are foldable, and this allows it to increase the surface area for it to do a lot of important things, like for example producing lots of proteins and also lipids. Now the next one here is where there is a clear distinction, and that is cell wall. The cell wall is found in plant cell, but not in animal cell. That is why animal cells tend to be flexible. However, for plant cell, they are known to be rigid, and this is leading to the type of shape you should expect from a plant cell. It is known to be a regular shape due to the cell wall. However, for an animal cell, it is flexible now, or it is irregular shape. Now cellulose is the main material that is found in the cell wall, and the next one here we're going to look at is G. G represents the green pigment that is found chloroplast. The pigment is chlorophyll, and this here is present in plant cell, and that gives the plant its distinct green color. This here, the pigment, is able to capture sunlight energy and use this to make food. And this food here is stored as sugar, and this requires not only air but also water for it to make this food, in this case glucose, and release a gas known as oxygen. This process here of using sunlight to make food is known as photosynthesis, and so that is pretty impressive when it comes to the main distinct feature of this plant cell here. This big space here that is found in plant cell labeled H is known as a vacuole, and the vacuole is known to have a lot of water present in it, and the reason why the water is present is it allows it to, of course, store water for the, like we said, the making of food with the presence of sunlight and air, but also when it comes to the sternness of our stems and leaves, that is where we know that, oh, this plant has a lot of water in it. And so when there's no water in the soil, you will see the stem and the leaves crumble. Parts of the cell that are kind of like little factories are known as organelles. And so these here are what we need to know about the cell. Next is we're going to go through a field tech section, how this is applied in the field, and it is the use of a compound microscope. And what is this device all about? This device has many parts first, which is the eyepiece, usually around 2 to 10x magnification. We have the objective lens, which ranges from the smallest, which is in this case they will say 4 to medium 10, and then highest to be 40. And then another one here is known as the coarse and fine focus. Coarse is a massive move on your stage, while fine is smaller movement of your stage. Now we have the stage and we have the slide that is placed on the stage, and the slide contains the sample or specimen, and we have light that is at the bottom of the stage, the light source. Now there is a lot of things that you need to know about the compound microscope. This here helps us to see very small objects that are ranging from less than what you can not see with your naked eye to almost 10 to the power of -6 meters. And the next thing here is when it comes to the lenses, these lenses are kind of magnified lens that are aligned in a particular way in order for way to close in or zoom in and make things that are really small to look really big and massive. And the next thing is we need the light source to be shown on the stage that has the specimen on it, and this is to help us to properly visualize our specimen. And there are some filters that you can put in the diaphragm that kind of gives you cool colors, and this is why improvement, I would say. Now this here can lead to cheaper versions or way more expensive microscopes, and these more improved ones can be really expensive. Like for example, the electron microscope. Electron is way smaller in size than light, so for electron it can really allow you to detect the organelles really well. But because we're in high school, we depend mainly on the compound microscope. See you on the next video. Stay smart as always.